Well, let me say maybe as a prelude to that also that you had asked about other people who have influenced me, and I would put Alasdair MacIntyre in that group. There are other people as well. For me, W.H. Auden, the poet, is an incredibly powerful presence. The first real theologian who I encountered in a book form was Martin Luther, and so Luther has in some ways decisively influenced me. The liveliness of his presence in his thinking. But yes, Alasdair MacIntyre has been a presence for me in my life as an intellectual stormfront, as it were, ever since I was maybe 20 years old. I was fortunate in my college days to take a seminar with a teacher who's very influential to me, a theologian named Diane Yeager, still alive, still very much kicking. And she had designed a class where we would do nothing but read MacIntyre. And I had read a little bit of MacIntyre before this, but reading everything he had written up until this point, which is 1991, was an incredible experience. You get to know a thinker in that way. MacIntyre is a remarkable figure. I don't know the full details of his story, but he was raised, I believe, in an Anglo-Irish, so either in Ireland or maybe in Scotland, I'm not sure exactly where, but raised among a culture of people who went back a long way. They understood themselves to be located in a certain place. Intellectually, a remarkably vibrant young man. He wrote famously a book in his early 20s called Difficulties in Christian Belief. And as someone else said, he decided after writing the book that the difficulties in Christian belief were insuperable, and so he stopped being a Christian. And then he became a kind of Marxist and developed over the rest of the 1950s and 60s and then into the 70s a rather large analysis and critique of modernity as a place that is existing in some important ways, as his most famous book is entitled After Virtue. We've lost the capacity to talk about virtue. And then in the course of writing these books, he discovered that there were resources, moral and spiritual resources, in this broader Christian tradition that still spoke to him in a powerful way. And in the process, I believe, of writing the second of these big books, Whose Justice, Which Rationality, he returned to Christianity, became a Roman Catholic, and has stayed that ever since, though a famously combative guy. We had, at the end of our seminar with him, the wonderful good fortune of having him visit us for a day. And it was one of us. It wasn't a particular person. We all thought this. We all thought we had been very special to have done this class about MacIntyre. And we were all thinking we were really, really terrific at doing it, and we asked him, Professor MacIntyre, what do you think of our class? And he's sitting there at lunch eating his sandwich, and he says, oh, well, I think it's a disaster. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, if you had read anything I have written and understood it, you would have stopped reading me at once and started reading Thomas Aquinas and Aristotle. Which struck me as a fair point, and I think that most teachers often feel a little weird at becoming the object of students' interest. You want them to be interested in the thing you're trying desperately to get them to look at. And that's the way it is often with a little child, right? When you're trying to get a little child to look at something and you start gesticulating wildly and you're saying, look over there. Of course, you, as the wildly gesticulating person, become ever more fascinating to the kid. And it's a very frustrating experience. But unfortunately, we had not known Professor MacIntyre's, well, fortunately for us, actually, we had not known what Professor MacIntyre's answer would be, and so we had not stopped our class and read Thomas Aquinas. I have read much more Aquinas since then, and no offense to Professor MacIntyre, I completely understand what he was trying to say. Nonetheless, I still think it was worth our while to have read Alasdair MacIntyre.